Welcome to another edition of Splitting Hairs with Max and Nicky.
As usual, I'm Max.
And I'm Nicky.
And together we're
Max and Nicky.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing high school.
Everything about high school.
Everything you wanted to know about high school and more.
Everything you wanted to learn about high school and more. Yes. We're going to talk about, all the bad things, all the good things. There's a lot of bad things.
And everything in between.
Yeah, but you know what? We're also going to talk about ways we think high school should be improved to better enrich a teenager's life.
Sure, and we'll be discussing some personal experiences and our personal experiences with, just our personal experiences with high school and how that maybe sort of developed our own sensibilities and our own characteristics.
Yeah, I guess that's one thing we could talk about is going to not only a public high school, but going to a relatively, not the best.
It was not
public
the best high school.
We went to a high school in the Los Angeles Unified School District.
Which is considered not one of the best school districts, actually.
You would think one of the biggest cities in America would have a strong school
apparently,
district. But
apparently.
I've
heard that.
It's such a vast, county that there's going to be some good ones and bad ones and everything in between, just like the topic we're discussing
today.
But
from what I understand, from what other people have heard, what other people in other school districts
we'll get into
Los
this.
Angeles Unified School District have said that it's considered not that great. I mean, who knows?
Well, anyway, we'll get into it because there's some good teachers, and there's probably a high school we should have gone to instead. But before we get into that, just want to remind you all that we recently kicked off a Patreon campaign, and if you like what you hear today and you would like to continue listening to more Splitting Hairs with Max and Nicky and get in on all the benefits such as extra episodes and free downloadable media and so on and so forth and other exciting benefits, please subscribe to our
benefits.
Right. Please excite yourself in subscribing to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/splittinghairs.
Once again, that's patreon.com/splittinghairs.
That's right, Max. All right. Anyway, do we got any station business today?
Speaking of splitting hairs, since the last time we had an episode, we, in a manner of speaking, split our hairs and we got haircuts.
That's true. It's actually already been maybe a few weeks since we got haircuts or since we recorded the last episode. And you know what? My hair is already growing back a little bit. I mean, I noticed my sideburns are getting a little bit longer. I'm like, geez, what the heck? I feel like I just got a haircut.
That's true. My hair is growing out back a little bit. I got, in fact, it looks short. In fact, my haircut was a bit shorter than I had intended. It had been a while since I had seen the normal stylist that I normally had seen prior to the pandemic, and I think he got maybe a little scissor crazy.
Well, we like to say scissor friendly, perhaps. I mean, we don't like to, call him crazy. It's not crazy, but anyway,
you're joking, right?
Anyway,
I mean, boy, oh boy, are you joking? I mean,
no. I'm just
scissor friendly.
I am joking. I'm joking, but that's the correct term. I think he got a little scissor friendly.
The correct term? What are you talking about?
Anyway, Max's hair. No. I don't know. Anyway, Max's hair.
You're not supposed to say scissor.
No. I didn't say you can't say that. That's not what I'm trying to say.
You're trying to say it has a little bit of a negative connotation, and so, but he is a good stylist. So you're saying, he should say scissor friendly.
Yeah.
I get that, but I don't feel like scissor friendly properly denotes what I intend. I think
what you intended to connote.
No, what I intended to express, which is, he cut off a little too much, I feel.
Well, anyway, Max's hair
but
actually
good. It was still good, though.
Max's hair looks a little short right now, but that's only because he just got out of the shower. So
you don't need to say that. I mean,
well, wow. What are you embarrassed about taking showers?
No, but I mean, it's like, you don't need to say that.
Well, okay. Everybody who's listening to this, Max takes showers. I'm sorry to embarrass him.
Well, I know. I don't know. Maybe it got implanted in my head because one time during sophomore year of college, my music partner, my musicianship partner, I saw
Max was a music major.
I saw her earlier on. I had quite a few classes with her, and I saw her earlier on in the day, and then the next class I saw her was, a few hours later, and her hair was kind of wet, and I was like, "Oh, you took a shower," and the teacher was like, "That is so rude," and I was like, "What?" I was like, "I saw her earlier on today, it just, her hair wasn't wet, and now it is." It just seemed to be,
maybe because it implies that, oh, you looked dirty before, I can see why the teacher might have viewed that as offensive somehow.
Well, no, he just thought
like when somebody.
No, he thought it was inappropriate. He said he thought it was inappropriate.
Like when somebody.
He said it was inappropriate.
It's like when somebody sees you after a long time, they're like, "My God, you look great!" Like almost as if you hadn't looked good beforehand.
No, I mean they should accept that as a compliment.
No, look, hey, I mean, I'm just trying to get in the mindset of your former teacher.
Well, but
I'm not sensitive in that way. I mean, hey, we gotta ease up on trying to be overly sensitive with things these days.
Well, it's kind of funny because whatever. That's college. That's a whole different story. That's another topic we should discuss, Nicky. College.
Sure, we do high school now, and then college later.
Well, and then middle school and elementary school.
Well, sure,
and kindergarten and Kinder Chicks, if you remember that. It was a preschool. It was the name of a preschool that we went to.
Well, but maybe we should have Trevor on Kinder Chicks because he went with us.
Sure, but
our friend Trevor.
But I will say that
no, but we do high school now, and then in 4 years, we'll do a topic on college.
Well, the teacher, I should specify, he didn't say it was rude. He said it was inappropriate. I guess the idea implying that there's something, inappropriate of commenting somebody's personal hygiene, routine, I guess, He thought that.
I guess, whatever. That's lame,
I didn't think that at the time. I just was merely, because I saw her earlier on in the day, and she looked, her hair was, weighed down by, dampness. And I just said, "Oh, you took a shower," So I don't know. It just, but I guess I can kind of wrap my head around why. That's why I thought earlier when I said, "Nicky, you don't have to reveal that I took a shower." I guess that's always been kind of, in my head about that.
By the way, just on a small tangent, I know some people like taking showers.
Wait, I know I just said we tend to say a lot.
Okay.
I don't know if I
now
said
that you don't have to point out.
Did I say have I been doing it?
Oh, gosh, man, just cut it out over here, as they say.
Cut it out.
Joey speaking Gladstone. Of showers, maybe this could be another topic for another time, but showers, I do not like taking them. I do take them almost every day, but it's such a drag. Gosh,
It's a bit of an annoyance.
Except
unless you're
unless it's like really hot
and you're like, all right, taking a shower would feel really good right now.
Right, but for the most part, sometimes you either want to get on with the rest of your day or you want to go to bed and you just don't want to have to do the added extra chore of taking a shower.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to. Anyway, that's actually maybe showers should fall under the subject heading of bedtime routines or something like that. Morning and bedtime routines. Let's talk about it another time. Anyway, we have any station?
Maybe. I mean, that's not that interesting.
Sure, I guess. Well, that's the beauty of this podcast is we take very trivial subjects and we pick them apart and make them interesting.
They are trivial to most people. What
we
would be
make
considered
them, we make them interesting.
No, it would be considered trivial, but to us, we can be passionate about it. But with, hygiene routines, I don't particularly find that necessarily to be an engaging conversation. But
oh, not at all. I think it could be very engaging.
Well, maybe.
Anyway, station business. Do we have any station business?
Station business. Well, I don't believe so. I guess we could talk, the U.S. Open's coming up in the next month and a half, and we're trying to maybe go check that out.
That's not that exciting.
I don't know. That's not really station business, but...
Sure. What about Wimbledon? Novak Djokovic just won his 20th Grand Slam.
Boy, oh boy, he may...
Tied with Federer and Nadal.
I gotta say, he may actually be the best of all time.
Well, this is the way I describe the big three tennis players. That's Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic. For those of you who are not sports fans, maybe you want to fast forward maybe 1 minute or something like that, or just listen to this exciting discussion about the big three.
I'm generally not a big sports fan, but I'm a tennis fan.
Tennis is fun.
Most sports, so I don't really care.
Speaking of the big three, the way I like to describe each is Federer has a lot of grace. He's very graceful in his movements and very calculating.
And there's a fluidity.
There's a fluidity. With Nadal, it's brute strength and sort of the most amount of effort you have ever seen in a tennis player. He gives it his all every time. And so
well, no, they all give it their all.
He's sort of hard hitting and sort of maximum amount of effort. Novak Djokovic, he is like a robot. He's like a cyborg. I feel like he instinctually knows what to do at any given moment, almost like a robot would, and like a robot, he doesn't quite break down easily as a human might.
He has a high endurance. And I think in the French Open, which he also won recently, that was really apparent. He was down against Tsitsipas. And
two sets.
And Tsitsipas it looked like he was on his way to defeating him in the third set, I think, right? If I remember correctly. But Djokovic he had better endurance. Tsitsipas is young too. I think his nerves got the best of him. And I think he'll grow to realize that he'll get better. I think he's a future star for sure. But Djokovic has more experience.
And Djokovic shows no signs of wear and tear. I mean, he's
he's one of the older people.
And he's like 34 years old.
Yeah, in the
tour.
The tour.
God, gee whiz.
And but yeah, he just doesn't show any signs. Federer. That's the thing why I think Djokovic might be the best, because around this time, Federer at this age was winning less Grand Slams. He won most of his.
Federer's won. I think he won his last Grand Slam in 2018. It was the Australian Open.
Right,
and
but
so
he won most his fair share of them in the first decade of the 2000s.
All right. Well, anyway, let's. I feel like
he was more. I think he more in his 20s at that time.
I feel like we've talked enough about tennis, though, huh?
Okay, that's enough about tennis. That's a whole nother subject we could delve into.
Yeah.
Although maybe.
Maybe. We're working on these new songs we've been working on for a long time now, and hopefully they come out soon. Another thing that's going to come out very soon, probably within the next week or so, is about a year and a half ago, Max and I set out on a project to release a music video every week, a live music video every week, usually of oldies covers and jazz standards, and sometimes the occasional heartfelt original.
And sometimes the occasional?
Yes.
That's redundant.
Well, I'm a redundant guy. And people during that time kept telling us, put those covers on Spotify. And Max and I were under the impression at the time that we'd have to license the songs in order to put them on Spotify or any streaming service. Well, I recently looked it up, and Spotify and iTunes, or Apple rather, have made a deal with publishing companies, and they will pay out the publishing companies even if you stream covers on their sites. So you can go for it. And so, with all that said, Max and I will be releasing all those covers on Spotify, or at least the top 40 to 45 of our favorite covers of those 52, because we did them for 52 weeks, which is a year. And we're going to release them on Spotify and iTunes and Bandcamp. So look out for that. So all of you fans that wanted to be able to stream those whenever you wanted to without the hassle of going through YouTube and YouTube ads, you can now you will soon be able to stream them on Spotify and iTunes and so on and so forth.
And there you go.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, let's get on with the topic at hand.
High school. Well, what about where do we start? Well, okay, let's start
Ninth grade.
Let's start. Let's set the scene. Los Angeles, California, more specifically Van Nuys, more specifically, even more so, Valley Glen, California, 2002.
More specifically, the cross streets of Coldwater and
Oxnard.
Well, between Oxnard and Burbank.
2002, September. Two wide-eyed lads walking into what seemed like a big... I can't do this. I'm not one of these types that can improvise a whole story setting here. I mean, who am I? Fraser Crane over here?
Right.
I mean, geez.
Anyway, Nicky and I went to a high school of about, over 2,000 students, right?
Yeah, there were 3,000. In fact, there were this is how the statistic is at the start of every year, there would be about 3,000 students. And by the end of the year, there would be about 2,400 students. Something about around 600 students would drop out over the course of the year.
Also, our incoming class of freshmen, what was that? How many was that? Maybe about 1,000, over 1,000. But then
by the time we graduated,
it went down to like 400 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that that's a bad thing. Some kids drop out and then go get their GEDs and then go on to a junior college, or they might, or they have other aspirations that maybe school's not the thing for them.
Our sister, she got her GED when she was in 11th grade, and then she went to community college, and then she transferred to UC Santa Cruz, and she had a great education there,
Right. So there you go.
But we're talking specifically about right now, currently, our particular high school experience.
Well, our particular high school experience, but also others. We've taught high school substitute teaching, by the way, so that'll go into this conversation.
Oh, gosh. Okay, well, this is a loaded subject here, I guess. There's a lot to talk about. Let's start off with us going to high school. So ninth grade, we come in, we had a few friends from middle school and elementary school that entered this particular high school. And so take it away, Nicky. What would you like to talk about first? Well, I
guess I remember the first day, first couple days of school.
I felt self-conscious. I must admit, when we walked into that homeroom class,
I was quite nervous.
I was nervous. I felt like...
I always got nervous, the day before the first day of school.
I felt like, we were in this homeroom with older kids, and I felt like they were staring at us like, oh, who are these freshmen?
Wait, homeroom? With other kids?
Yeah, there were older kids in our homeroom, yeah.
In ninth grade.
I don't know. Maybe it wasn't our homeroom. I cannot remember. It might have been Spanish 1. It might have been Spanish 2.
You're incorrect. Yeah.
It might have been Spanish 2.
Spanish 2.
Yeah. It was Miss Albarracin's class.
Albarracin Schaefer, actually. She was married. And they had a hyphenated name, I believe.
Well, anyway, yes, it was Spanish 2, but there were older kids in the class, and I felt self-conscious. I felt like they were staring at me and, thinking I'm some...
No, this wasn't the first course of the day. We were in marching band. That was the first class we went to, actually. And
that's right. Max and I were in marching band our first semester of freshman year and sophomore year.
So yes, there is a
partially there was a reason for it was that we would get PE credit for being in the marching band.
That's partially a reason, but we also were musicians too.
We are also musicians, and
I played the trumpet. Nicky
played the saxophone,
alto saxophone. And anyway, just to make this more...
We were also, later on in high school, we were involved in the jazz band, and at one point even the orchestra.
I was in the musicals too. Anyway,
I was in the musicals.
We'll
get to that later.
Too much about,
but that's more personal experience, and which we'll get to.
To make this more relatable, we were a bit nervous, as many people are. I mean, high school, you're meeting kids that have gone through. You are going through puberty at that time, which is always a very
awkward stage of
your life. But not only that, you are going into a place where there are kids that have already kind of gone through a lot of have gone through puberty in a way and kind of already look older. So there's a kind of a self-consciousness already in that as well. You're this young ninth grader that's going through the process, and then you're also in classrooms with people that have facial hair. And
right. I remember
look older,
being on the sort of the quad, as they called it, the lawn area that people hung out on during recess and lunch, or they called it nutrition in our day. And I remember there were some kids, they looked so much older. The discrepancy between a freshman and a senior was pretty great at that point.
Well, especially for us, because
we've always looked
young for our age. Mm-hmm. I think even in college and beyond, I still looked, like a youngster.
But you look at 2002, these freshmen entering high school, and you think, I'm looking back right now, and I'm thinking, I'm looking at all the kids, and I'm thinking,
Nicky, come on,
boy. Fashion was horrible back in 2002.
Fashion in 2002, even our own fashion was not that good. I will say it wasn't, it wasn't
I feel like
great.
I started developing my fashion sense around in the middle of 11th grade, maybe a little bit earlier, and
I didn't start developing my fashion sense until college.
But I didn't truly gain a great understanding of what I wanted to look like until maybe I got to college. But no, I mean, I don't know. Anyway, here's the thing. So fashion was terrible back at that point. There were still, skater clothes were maybe still the popular kind of thing to wear.
I think we even were wearing still. Were we still wearing skater shoes?
Yeah, we were, and God, how I regret that, because it's bad for our feet. We wore these loose shoes, and I wasn't wearing my orthotics at the time.
They were big too. They were big, but our older brother had referred to them as clown shoes. They were in back then, like ESs or S's. Some people call them.
Sometimes I think back and
DC.
I look back on those years and think, boy, if I could change certain things, I would tell myself, dress this way, dress a certain way. Trust me, the ladies are going to love you. But that's a part of high school. You go through a lot of things that you regret. And
well, also, by the way, when we got to college, there was a big change in just fashion in general. A large part of it has to do with Mad Men becoming popular, actually. But
it's the slim fitting clothes.
I mean, they were already starting to come into fashion before that. I mean, kids were wearing tight jeans, but fitting clothes were starting to come
Fitting clothes really started becoming a thing, I would say, when we were maybe juniors or seniors in high school, actually. I mean, sorry, in juniors and seniors in college, rather. 2008, 2009.
Oh, no, not necessarily.
Yes, but not necessarily.
But we were kind of starting to wear slim jeans in sophomore year.
I gotta say, we are spending way too much time on fashion.
Hey, that's even the most fault. You brought it up.
Anyway, but I do think, gosh, fashion was so terrible. Even, like all the way from the 90s all the way until the mid 2000s, fashion was really bad.
Well, particularly the 90s.
Particularly the 90s, especially men's fashion.
I mean, you can kind of see it in Frasier.
The suits were ill-fitting.
Suits were really ill-fitting, and like
people are swimming in their suits.
But you can start to see
Janko jeans was a thing that was terrible.
Yeah, but you can start to see, the things starting to get slimmer as Frasier went on. Into the 2000s.
So, but
speaking of Janko stuff, in high school, some kids would be wearing these Janko pants, jeans and pants.
Anyway. So you look at it and you think, wow, man, what a time,
Okay, let's get more specific here.
Okay.
You're talking about fashion. That's
okay.
Not the hugest part, although that is a significant part for sure.
All right. Basically, teenagers during that time, they're
Uggs, by the way.
I hated Uggs. Those are big. Anyway, teenagers in high school, they're going through a lot of changes, especially in your early part of high school. But there's a lot just to think about. You're worrying about college. And so why all this pressure in high school? This is, I guess, what I want to start off with. There's some things that I just hope that high schools can improve upon in years to come, because during my years, I never got enough sleep during high school, especially my junior year. There's so much pressure to get into a good college. And Max and I did go to a good college. We went to UC Berkeley.
You don't have to mention
that. But we worked really hard at it. That's the thing, is you have to work so hard to do well. And so here's bullet point number 1. Why so much homework? Why does there have to be so much homework in high school? I mean, they can't accomplish what they need to teach you at school. You're supposed to go to school only to get home and do more school? I mean, that doesn't make sense.
I mean,
you gotta get some rest.
You need to have some homework, though. I mean, you need to practice the skills you're learning throughout the day.
I know, but you need the rest. Max and I were really good at math. Let me tell you what. I've forgotten how to do so much of the math we learned in high school, and we were really good at it.
Well, okay, but we didn't. It's because we don't utilize it, a lot of it, today, because we didn't. That's not our focus. In life.
But Max, come on. There's just got to be they got to change a major systemic change in high school with the homework. I mean, Jesus.
It's true. There is a lot, especially.
There was nights where
U.S. history, we did these things called Cornell notes, AP U.S. history.
I hated them.
One of the biggest complete waste of time.
Some nights I would get 2 hours of sleep
I've ever had.
I would get 2 hours of sleep before I had to go to, wake up and go to school the next day, all due to those Cornell
Let
notes.
me tell you, it was also just the teacher's dependency on that for us to learn was just ridiculous. Just to give you an example of how much of a waste of a time it was, I think out of all the U.S.
This was our high school in particular,
right,
which was not great.
Of the AP US, of all the people that took the AP US history test, only 2 people passed. There you go.
There you go. But Max, it's just the homework is stressful.
No, but some people did it right. I feel like our AP psychology teacher did it right. She assigned homework that would test your knowledge. She knew exactly what would kind of be on the test, and she would test your knowledge of that stuff. And I thought she was very good about teaching what was needed to succeed at the AP test.
There's just so much unwanted stress during high school you're already going to experience that during your adult life. Let children be children, or let teenagers be teenagers. So that brings me to another point.
But don't you think that there is something to homework in that it causes you to have discipline yourself in a way?
I disagree.
To focus on completing an assignment that has a deadline, and you do learn to do that kind of a thing.
Okay,
later
in
life. You have
so
to do
maybe
that
not homework every night.
No,
let me tell you what. I still have stress dreams where I am in high school and there's a class. I'm doing well in high school, but there's one class that I have not gone to in many, many weeks, and I keep putting it off, and I'm going to fail this class.
I have that too.
Or there's I
have that kind of dream
some
too,
kind of assignment that I haven't done, or an essay or something, and I keep thinking I have to do it, and I just never gets done.
I get that kind of class. I get that kind of dream, and sometimes I think, I guess I'll just drop this class and I'll take it next semester. But I keep thinking, oh crap, did I even drop this class? I didn't think I did.
Sometimes I think I'm already going to high school for an extra semester, because I didn't complete this class,
Sometimes it turns into a college thing, but from what I understand, that's a kind of a common dream. There is, there's more of a hidden meaning to it, though. It doesn't have anything to do with school, actually. It has something to do more with
high school,
anxiety.
There's a lot of anxiety and angst going on. I mean, you're a teenager. You might be depressed. You might feel like you're not fitting in your high school. You might feel like the only one. Nobody understands you. You also might be experiencing romantic relationships for the first time, and that's an extra added layer of stress for some people. And so that mixed with, because you're becoming a young adult and you're learning adult things. You get your driver's license and you're being trusted to drive, which is an adult thing. And so there's all this stress, homework,
driver's license.
Too much homework is just not good. They got to change it. Here's another bullet point.
And also because that's a real. You're growing. Your body is changing. You're growing. You need the most amount of sleep ever.
You need the most amount of sleep. Max and I might be taller today. Who knows?
Maybe.
I feel like we could be.
But you really need.
We did not get enough sleep in high school.
No.
I would say on average we got 6 hours of sleep a night, which is not enough. It's not enough.
No, it's not good.
You need between 7 and 9 hours. I would say as a teenager, you should probably be getting 9 hours of sleep a night.
You should. Well, I mean, you should just get enough where you can naturally wake up and feel. And that's the thing. If teenagers are more prone to staying up late, and that's already, that's another thing that should maybe be changed is later start times.
That's what I was going to get to if you let me get to my next bullet point.
Later start times.
Later start times. First of all, if homework is causing you to go to bed too late, there's too much homework then. That's just the bottom line.
That's the bottom line.
Now, I will say, Max and I...
That's the bottom line.
We did... we created a large workload for ourselves. We took a total of 9 AP classes.
That was a lot.
9 AP classes during our high school careers, as it were. And
but that's another thing. There's kind of this overemphasis on trying to
get into a good college,
and you need to how am I going to do that? I need to take
but it's also was a personal,
rigorous course load.
It's also a personal thing where you're thinking, I should be taking the hardest course because I want to get the most out of it,
Sure.
I mean, that's just a personal thing where we're like, no, I don't want to take honors English. I want to take AP English language because I'm going to get the most out of that class. I'm going to get way more out of it.
Our teacher for that class, Dr. Pressman, was a very good teacher.
He was one of our top 2 teachers in high school.
And he became sort of a mentor to us.
Our other favorite teacher was our AP English literature teacher, Mrs. Fisher.
Sure.
Both English teachers. Dr. Pressman, what a great teacher. He became a friend, even somebody who I talked to after college.
Right. We would always play chess.
Yes.
We should call him up, actually.
We
haven't talked to him in...
I haven't talked to him in maybe 8 years, yeah. It's 2013. But so that brings us to the next point. Later start times. High school, teenagers, they don't go to bed by 10 p.m. I'm sorry. That just doesn't happen. They don't want to go to bed by then. I feel like there's something hardwired in teenagers' brains to make them want to go to bed at the earliest, midnight, which means that they shouldn't be having to wake up until, at the earliest, 8 a.m., which means high school should really start at 10 a.m., I think. And if you want to go later on in the day, like 5 p.m., so be it. That's a little late, sure. But maybe there's a way to condense the classes and maybe make high school get out at 4. That's another thing. The high school day is too long.
Yeah, I know. Let's just imagine here for a second. You get to school, you start school at around 8, right? You get out about...
Well, hold on. When we were a marching band, 7. We had to get there at 7.
I mean, that's just a ridiculous thing right there. It was almost like having 7 periods. But, that's on us. We did that. And also kids, they do extracurriculars too, like they're in the musical or whatever.
I mean, I was in a musical in 11th grade and 12th grade. I mean, yes, I know it sounds like I'm bragging a little bit. I was the lead in the musical which was Hair in my senior year of high school. You're involved in all these extracurriculars because you think that's going to look good on my college application. Not only that, I wanted to be involved in the musicals, but I didn't even have enough time to do that, and I had to stay long hours after school to be involved in those musicals.
Well, anyway, let's just check it out for somebody that's not even taking extracurricular stuff. I mean, a lot of kids do sports too, by the way. So that's a few hours after school already. I mean, we did tennis in high school.
Yes, played tennis. We weren't very good at it, but we did play. I mean,
we were all right.
No, we were all right. We weren't bad.
We were all right.
We were all right, but we weren't bad. But hey, well, you're that's one's telling me not to be so braggadocious. But.
I'm not, but don't say that we're not very good. I mean, we were all right.
Sure. We were not bad. But yeah, even the tennis team, you're staying after school to do, the matches.
Well, but it's not just that. A lot of kids do some extracurricular, be it baseball, basketball, golf,
any sports
in general,
or like the different clubs, like the nursing club.
There was a nursing.
There was a nursing club.
That's interesting.
It was like kids who wanted to be future nurses.
Anyway. There were different clubs people did.
We did a lot of clubs. Actually, I created.
Well, but there's also student leadership, which takes up time.
Hold on, real quick. I created the comedy club in high school. You know that? How about that? When I was a sophomore in college, I created the comedy club.
I created the cartooning club, and I believe we had one meeting.
The comedy club had very committed. A lot of meetings. At first, it was a thing where we would do stand-up. Max and I did some jokes, but nobody else really did stand-up in there. So we ended up just either watching stand-up comedy clips, or we ended up at one point just showing like episodes of Family Guy.
Okay. Or
I remember watching the Comedy Central presents of Mitch Hedberg. One meeting or something with Rodney Danger. I remember we were just a meeting. We just talked about Rodney Dangerfield. It was 2004 because that's when he had passed away.
Oh, really? Well, Mitch Hedberg also had passed away.
Sure.
When we were watching that film footage of him.
But so the comedy club, that was fun. You do these clubs, but we were involved in a lot of clubs, and we weren't involved in some clubs that we snuck into the photos of for the yearbook.
That was a day we were trying to skip out on class and try to justify it by saying we had to do the photos.
Well, that was a thing, though. Sometimes, especially when I was a sophomore, sometimes there were classes that we wouldn't be doing anything in. I would ask to go use the bathroom, and I would just sort of walk around the halls and go into different classes and hang out with different friends. it was sort of weird,
Not me. I never did that.
I did that during orchestra because I played the saxophone, and the teacher at the time, he didn't really have much in the way of a saxophone part.
I didn't do that.
But so I would go hang out with my friends that were in the academic decathlon.
Boy, that sounded really nerdy in a way.
I know. Well,
he said I skipped out on my orchestra class to hang out with my friends in academic decathlon.
Well, it was funny because they didn't do anything at that point because they had already done their competitions or whatever.
No, I'm just kidding.
I know
it sounds nerdy, but
I know it does.
It
does.
We did all that stuff. We did Science Bowl.
Well, here's the thing about Max and me is we were involved with so many different things that we ended up becoming friendly with a lot of different groups and a lot of different people in high school, such that people would know us as the Weinbachs. I didn't even know who some of these people were.
Really? Is that true?
I remember when I was driving before, we were driving home from school, and this girl was like, "Is that Weinbach? Is that Weinbach driving?" And I'm like, "Who are you? I don't even know who you are." And I don't even think she knew my first name.
Really?
Yeah. I thought, oh, that's interesting that just people are getting to know us as the Weinbachs. You know, we were twins too. And
I didn't know that.
But so by the time we were seniors, I guess this kind of gets into the next part of the subject.
Well, okay. We didn't
because
really
we went to
finish ninth grade, but
because we were we're doing tangents. I mean, it's going to be hard to cover every minutia.
Tangents are made.
Tangents are made.
That should be our slogan. Tangents are made.
Splitting hairs with Max and Nicky. Tangents are made. You know, if you watch movies and TV shows, there's always a display of.
Was there a movie club?
There was Chris Mallory. He started the film appreciation club.
Oh,
which
did he really?
Never really got off. It never really. I think there was one meeting or something.
Man, that's too bad. That would have been
we went to a school where there was it was a communications and technology magnet, which we were members of the magnet. And
so we were required to take.
There were film classes,
film class,
and computer classes. But we took these film classes, which is kind of a cool thing that would be offered at a high school, right?
I mean, we also took AP Computer Science as well.
Sure,
that was a fun class. It was just kind of. It was mainly guys in that class, and it was just kind of. There was this one girl in it, but there
was just one girl, and so. It was just kind of.
But she was like one of the guys.
It was kind of a boys' club.
It was kind of a boys' club, but it was fun for that reason.
I remember this one guy farted in the class, and he just didn't care because it was just all guys.
Right,
mostly,
but we all laughed because it was this. I mean, one, because he farted, but two, because there was this realization that he farted because he felt comfortable farting in front of everybody. That was this realization that we all felt, and that was funny, you know.
Right.
And also that guy, a few moments later, he had to go to the bathroom, and he came back, and he told the whole class, he's like, I feel 10 pounds lighter. I just thought no other class would he be able to, feel comfortable saying that, I feel like.
Right.
And that was cool. And that class was very cool. I felt like, not that, I feel it just, there was a certain kind of vibe because there were all guys in that class. Not to say that girls can't have that feeling too. And
look, we're guys, and when you're just a bunch of your own kind, it's kind of fun. You're just like, the boys, you can kind of just let loose and, I mean, there's no added pressure of having to impress.
Right, especially in high school. I guess that's what we're trying to say is that in high school, it can be particularly a self-conscious time. So if you're around, if you're a boy and you're around girls, you feel the pressure, and vice versa. You feel a pressure of acting a certain way. And, when it's just the boys, you don't really, there is a certain pressure there too, for sure, but not, you can kind of, as Nicky said, let loose a little bit.
What was I talking about? Oh, yeah.
See how I feel like I'm trying to have to over-explain myself because, well, that's just a whole nother topic. But.
In film and in television, you always see a representation of cliques going on. And I got to say, so there were like popular groups and things like that. Our high school didn't really have a popular group, maybe because it was so large.
It was so
that
large.
There was no popular group. There were
the homecoming
people that sort of hung out on the quad, I guess, but
like the prom king and queen were not popular. There was no those are the popular kids, you know.
Yeah, especially by the time we were seniors, I feel like everybody kind of
knew each other.
Everyone kind of was not knew each other, but everybody was sort of friendly with each other. It wasn't. Oh, you don't want to hang out with those nerds or something like that. You know that wasn't a thing. You know,
there was always maybe there was a guy in the group that you were hanging out with that was friends, like good friends with the people in another group, and so you kind of there was this mixing of groups, you know, even though you kind of hung out with the people that you hung out with, but you switched it around, you know?
I mean, we hung out, when we were seniors, we hung out with, I guess you could describe them as maybe what hipsters might become eventually.
Right.
But we also hung out with the valedictorian of the school. He was this kid from Armenia
who was also in our AP computer science class. He was the only one that passed the class. Although sorry, not the class, but the test. I would have passed it, but we didn't get enough time on the AP test.
Max,
I'm very
really,
disappointed
Max,
about that.
Really, who
I really
cares?
am.
Max, really, who cares?
I am. I do care. I'm disappointed about that.
And then we would hang out with him and some other guys who, you know, were in jazz band with us. And then all these people would be friends. We would all be friends with some of the baseball players who were like kind of jock-ish kind of guys, but not really. They weren't really kind of jocks.
They weren't like the
They weren't your prototype.
You know, they weren't
like what a jock you would see on TV would be.
They definitely had jock, you know, mannerisms and stuff.
They had jocular tendencies.
Jocular.
I know. It was a double entendre, as it were.
Okay.
No, because they were fun to joke. They were fun to joke around with.
Yeah. No, yeah, we all, and the mixing of all those groups really came together in the shared classes we had, and we all were kind of friendly with each other in those classes. And
all of us, granted, we weren't friends with every single group in the high school because it.
And it's also not like we were,
3,000
friends with all these
3,000 students in the high school.
We weren't like really good friends.
I will say, amongst all these people, we all tried. I feel like pretty hard in school. I mean,
That's not true.
Maybe that's not true. I don't know, but I don't know. I mean, like a friend from jazz band who played trombone ended up going to UCLA with a friend who was on the baseball team who went to UCLA. You know, it was like that. You know, and I remember them bonding with each other at a graduation.
Wait, who was on the baseball?
Both of them. They had the same name, actually. No, they didn't.
No, they didn't.
They had the same
first.
They had
letter.
the same initials, rather.
Right. Oh, they were bonding?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
But anyway, so cliques weren't a thing because of such a big high school.
But there were.
But also,
there weren't like cliques in the same way that you absolutely wouldn't hang out with other people.
Right, but also on top of that, this is Los Angeles, baby. I mean, it's not like the middle of America where I feel like, hey, this is just the impression I get from TV and movies and maybe some documentaries is you get the impression that there's more of a division in kinds of the groups in the middle of America, maybe because it's so small. I don't know.
Well, not just the middle of America, but
suburban.
I hate to admit, but we did watch that show 13 Reasons Why, and there is a bit of a division of groups in that, right? Depictions of just smaller towns and even in California and the coasts and stuff.
Sometimes I watch these movies or television shows, and I think I have a nostalgia almost for those things that I might have missed by not growing up in a smaller town and going to a smaller town high school. I kind of feel like, if I grew up in a suburban area where you ride bikes everywhere and, there's all flat surfaces, there might have been a girl next door, that I fell in love with or something like that. And just my experience was very different. I grew up in Hollywood and
And we went to school.
We went to high school in the Valley. And it just...
But that's a unique experience in of itself.
No, it's a unique experience, but it makes me long for something that I might have missed by not growing up.
You're just buying into the idealized, romanticized
Sure, you watch The Wonder Years and you think,
kind of this American dream
that.
Kind of thing,
I wish I had this coming of age story with Winnie Cooper and but at the same time, I talk to people who did grow up in those areas and they think, trust me, that's only on TV and movies. In reality, it wasn't great. So who knows? But you do have sort of a longing, you look at it and you think.
All right, enough about that. Let's talk about high school.
Oh, I did want to say something real quick, which is we were talking about the hours and what would end up happening because school would start so early and we would be staying up so late to finish homework is Max and I would be tardy quite often. And we would get caught in these things called tardy sweeps where they would they would round up all the kids that would be arriving late and they would put them into the high school auditorium and you would have to sit there for pretty much the bulk of the first period. And this made absolutely no sense to me.
It was pretty stupid. This idea that if you're tardy, let's make them miss class altogether.
Because here's the thing.
You would want these kids to be a part of class more so because these are the kids, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense.
Well, here's the thing. Usually the kids that are in the charter sweep are kids that are not the best students, and
that's not necessarily true.
Well, anyway,
I mean,
here's the two-pronged effect of a charter sweep. With the bad kids, you're making the bad kids not go to class, which is what they want. And the good kids, you're preventing them from going to class, which is preventing them from learning and getting those high test scores and doing better in school, which is what the school would want because they want to look like a better school,
Well, and for the bad kids, it's like you're preventing them. You're giving, exactly what Nick is. You're giving them what they want, and that's no punishment.
Look, here's
plus
here's a fun.
It's not just punishment, but it's also it reinforces the behavior, I feel.
Okay, so all right, up next.
Anyway, so ninth grade, so by the way, as the year in ninth grade, so I want to get back to ninth grade here. As the year went by ninth grade, the nerves start to go away. And I
remember, though, in ninth grade, when we got to ninth grade, I mean, you can decide whether or not you want to cut this. I remember the first day there, the only people we knew were our friends from middle school and elementary school who were going to high school with us. And a few of them, I remember at lunchtime, we were trying to hang out with them, and they were not trying to hang out with us. They were trying to
ditch us.
They were trying to separate themselves, not be our friends anymore.
Right.
Well, by the end of high school, we were friends with them again, or we were them trying to ditch us.
That lasted maybe a day or two. Or something.
Yeah, it didn't last because we ended up hanging out with another friend from middle school who had another friend we had just met, and then everybody just started hanging out. Anyway, I was at that time. You start thinking, wow, I should really just try to find new friends.
We actually did start to hang out with other friends.
They tended to be older.
Right. That were in the marching band.
Well, then we started hanging out with, especially in 10th grade, we started hanging out with friends that were not in the They were
right. Well, so anyway.
They were just friends that were involved in comedy, I guess you could say. I mean, Max and I, especially me, started doing stand-up comedy at the end of our freshman year of high school, and
yes,
we got to know some people that wanted to do comedy too. They were older than us, and anyway,
we should kind of pick up the pace here and not make so many tangents.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that, just to relate it back to high school again, you start to get a little bit more confident as you progress through your ninth grade, or at least we did. And our second semester, we were on the tennis team, and a lot of the kids on the tennis team were older than us. And, just because they were older, we kind of thought they were cooler, actually, Right. In retrospect, looking back on it, if I were a senior in high school, I would probably not hang out with those guys.
I don't know. What are you talking about?
Okay, I take it back.
You take that back.
You take that back.
They were really funny, and they were fun to hang out with.
They were really funny and fun to hang out with. But I will say that outside of school, I probably, You
don't know that.
Well, maybe you're right. Let's cut that out.
No, you can keep it in. Keep it in.
No, I regret saying that. I'm sorry. What I meant by that was, I feel like maybe our tastes and things were probably not quite the same as theirs.
But yeah, you start gaining a little bit more confidence.
Anyway, we kept trying to hang out with those guys a little bit, even though they were older, and I feel like they probably didn't want these little, these little ninth graders hanging out with them, but they were being very kind of nice.
They were cool. They were cool,
I will say there was one time I went and tried to hang out with one of them, and one of them was hugging this girl for a prolonged time, and I was just kind of standing there, and he got annoyed with me after that, and I was like, I didn't understand why. I was like, wait, you were just hugging her, who cares? And I didn't realize he was trying to make something happen with her. It just seemed like he was, I don't know. I was just totally oblivious. I was such a youngster. And I think that was one of the reasons why I think, there was definitely a separation in ages there,
Right.
You learn stuff a little bit more.
Well, you really do change over the course of high school. That's a big thing, big topic here is change. I remember seeing kids, they look like scrawny kids going into high school, and by the senior year, they really changed. Some kids started dressing different ways and started trying to become cool, quote unquote. And I remember this one kid, he looked like some nerdy, scrawny kid, and then by the end of high school, he was this tall sort of guy wearing these baggy clothes, and just his accent changed too,
Who?
I don't even know if you remember him, but I don't even know his name, actually. But I remember this kid, and it just, people change. And my views on things changed. I remember I was so I remember we became friends with these guys who were sort of, looking back on it, they were like probably the stoners of, they were hipsters, I guess you could say. They were hipsters.
We already talked about the hipsters.
No, not them, but these other guys
years that were a year older.
They were a year older than us, and they were also really pretentious and stuck up.
Really pretentious and stuck up
in a funny way.
In a funny way that we kind of related to, especially at that time.
Yeah, but
because we were pretty pretentious, I'd say. I would say
but I remember
we were very narrow-minded in our scope.
I remember ninth grade when I first
how
heard
things should be.
When I first heard that they smoked marijuana, I was so against it. I was like, I can't believe you guys do that. That is not cool. And by the time I was in 12th grade, I was more open to the idea of other people doing these, smoking marijuana if they wanted to. That was okay. At this point in my life, I don't like. I mean, I know
we didn't do that.
I know this sounds like a bit of a tightwad kind of thing, or I don't know.
Wait, tightwad? That's not the right term for that.
This sounds like
tightwad has to do with money.
This sounds like really? Oh, whoops. Well, this sounds like a prudish, I guess you could say. Is I don't like marijuana or marijuana smoke. I don't like it around me. I hate the smell of marijuana. In fact, when it became legalized in New York recently, people are smoking on the street, and when I pass by it, it really bothers me. In the same way that cigarette smoke bothers me when I pass by it. But it's going to happen, and I do think legalizing it is ultimately better because it's probably better for the economy. It will lead to less incarcerations and drug-related incarcerations and things like that. But ultimately, I don't like it around me. I don't like marijuana around me. And by the time I was in even 11th grade, I felt that way. And I think when I was in 12th grade, I think if I had looked back, if my freshman self looked at myself in 12th grade, he might not have liked my 12th grade self.
What?
My 9th grade self might not have liked my 12th grade self. Because my fashion was changing by then too, and I was dressing a lot better. I had sweaters and
Nicky even dressed like a hippie at one point.
No,
he was in a musical called he was in Hair, the musical Hair.
No, but
I'm making a joke.
I wore tight jeans and
they weren't tight. They were pretty well fitting jeans. No,
they were tight jeans. I think. Anyway, I wore sweaters and collared shirts, and
okay.
I changed, but did my personality change? I don't know about that.
All right.
What about you, Max? My views on things changed, but
yeah.
What about you? Do you feel you changed over the course of high school?
I feel like I became more of an open-minded person.
I feel like I became more open-minded.
I became more open-minded, and I think, I felt like maybe I was a bit pretentious in my tastes. I think in 9th grade, but
right.
I will say that there is a sense of me still that exists today that is from 9th grade. I think, as we've kind of said often, that you were kind of essentially, or at least for me, I feel like there's an essential part of me that hasn't ever changed since, maybe since I was 14 or something like that.
Well, I remember meeting up for lunch with a friend the summer after our junior year of college. This was a high school friend, and he said, you guys just came back from studying abroad, and after going to college for 3 years and knowing you since you guys were freshmen, you guys really haven't changed much. He's like, a lot of people, their personalities would change, but you guys, the core of who you guys are is the same. And
but I will argue with that particular guy. I don't think he even ever seen us in our own most comfortable zone. I feel like
right.
I feel like he probably, if he would see us now, I feel like he would maybe think that we have changed.
Sure.
But I always felt not the most comfortable, especially at the time. I feel like I became more. That's a thing after going through high school and going into college. I feel like I became more comfortable with myself about who I am. I feel like, especially in college, I know we're delving into college, but you become, you have a better sense of yourself, and I think people are very open-minded in college, and they're all about kind of welcoming different walks of life, and
all about the Benjamins.
Well, yeah, and so I just think there's a kind of there's an openness and a comfort in being who you are, I guess, and I feel like people respond well to that, to who I was, and so I just felt that gave me a certain self-confidence that I feel like carried on through till now. I feel like
something that was very specific to our high school and this might sound a little weird, but there were these riots at our high school between the Armenians and Latinos. I know what you're thinking. What? Doesn't even make sense, right? How is that even a thing?
Well, why would that not make sense?
Because it just where else do you hear about Armenians and Latinos at war with each other?
Right, but you saying it doesn't make sense, that sounds, I don't know, anyway.
Well, anyway, here's the reason.
It makes sense because they were the two largest minorities in our high school.
They were the two largest minorities in our high school. And it's sort of a weird thing that you hear about riots or violence at other schools and other parts of the world, and it just so happens that this particular pocket of the valley had a larger minority of Armenians and Latinos, and that's what led to this. And nowhere else, I feel like, in the world do you hear about those minorities being against each other.
Right.
So something particular about our high school is sometimes there'd be these riots and we get locked into our classes.
Lockdown.
It was called lockdown. And we would be in there sometimes past the end of school. And then by the time they would release us, we'd have to walk all the way around the whole campus. Pardon me. Instead of going straight to the parking lot. It's just very weird, and I hope that those kinds of problems don't still exist at that school. I don't really have much to say about this, but I just think it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is quite interesting. I mean, look, that's part of going to public school also, and there is something, not that race rights or violence is good or anything, but just to have a cross-section of different backgrounds in a high school, I think is particularly more grounding and
it's more eye-opening
and
to
more real world, I guess.
Eye-opening to the real world than if you're sort of coddled in nothing against a private school in any way, or more affluent kind of high school. It just sometimes when you're exposed to this kind of stuff early, you might not come across so naive later on in life.
Not that we're not naive about things.
When you're confronted with the realities of the world.
Sure.
But that said, yeah, I would have preferred to those things kind of to not happen at our high school,
Right. But what I mean is,
we should have probably gone to a different high school. Actually, there was a performing arts high school that we should have gone to. I don't know why we didn't, but
right. But in any event, just regardless of the battles that would go on, just our high school had a diverse makeup, I'd say. And that is a little more real world exposed us to kind of, because a real world of circumstances, I feel like,
Which is good.
I don't think you get in even other parts of the country,
I have a friend who I studied abroad with, and she went to UC Santa Barbara, and she grew up in Idaho. And she said she had never gone to school with a black person until she went to college. Isn't that interesting? But that's just because of the place that she grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
But
and another thing that was cool about, by the way, being in the marching band and on the tennis team, and I'm sure other people can relate, is being involved in a sport or something that traveled around to other schools. I just said it there. A cool thing is that you get to travel to other schools and you meet kids at the other schools and you kind of trade stories
relating to the riots
thing,
relate
to them and you meet other walks of life that you go into other areas of Los Angeles that you might normally not go to, and you see how it is there in a way, and that's kind of interesting and eye-opening too.
Yeah, but also even people that are on your team, whether it's the marching band or the tennis team or what have you, like on our tennis team, there were Latinos and there were Armenians, and they were friendly. They were with each other, and so I feel like on the marching band too, there were Latinos and Armenians who were friends, and so it was interesting to see like how there were these riots going on, yet it's not like the two races hated each other. It was more of a dominance thing almost.
Right.
Know?
Well, just like that's just kind of common, I feel like, in high schools, just especially when there's large populations, of one culture or one background, and there's another population that is quite large on that school. There's a kind of there's a rivalries. Rivalries are always made in some way or form, and there's this idea of trying to establish dominance always,
Right. Which is really silly, Anyway.
So I just wanted to we were talking about ninth grade a lot. I just wanted to start getting into 10th grade a little bit here. We're probably going to be doing a part 2 of this. So we're going to wrap this conversation up shortly. And then, the week after, we'll do a part 2 of high school.
Right.
But 10th grade, I just wanted to mention, and maybe some of you guys went through this, but we became friends with a lot of...
Maybe we'll offer high school part 2 as an extra episode that you could download if you become a Patreon subscriber.
Sure, good idea. Well, maybe. I don't know. But I will say that in 10th grade, I don't know, maybe some of you guys went through this, but we became friends with a lot of seniors. And we started, you kind of get this sort of senioritis way too early because some of your friends are going through it. And I know Nicky didn't really go through this, but I started, for a couple classes, I started not doing as well, I feel like. And
that didn't happen for me.
I just started neglecting a little of my studies, which is another reason that I placed a little bit more pressure on myself in 11th grade to do better. Anyway, that's just a personal experience.
Yeah, no, I that didn't happen for me. For me, I guess the sort of senioritis thing came about where, when we were in orchestra, I would leave class for a long period of time and not come back. But it's not like we had homework for that class, and it's not like I had to worry about not getting a good grade on that class because it wasn't like that we were doing that much in there anyway. But
we did have a concert.
We did. Boy, I will say that is one thing that I really wish that our high school, because Max and I are very involved in the performing arts and have been for a long time. I wish our high school had more of an emphasis on the performing arts. The budget for those kinds of activities was quite low, and only enough such that I think even with the drama program, it was only budgeted for one musical a year, and I think maybe there was a play in the first half of the year. Yeah, I think so. But
really,
you probably didn't. Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't know about that.
We were involved in the music. We did Little Shop of Horrors in 11th grade.
I think most schools only have one musical. No,
that is not true. If you go to look at Hamilton High School, they had a lot going on.
Is that really for a whole in 1 year? They had more than one musical.
Sure. Yeah. Definitely.
You're sure?
Yeah.
Pretty good.
But that was our lot, and
but not all. Some schools have it even worse. They don't have a musical at all. You know.
That's true, Max. That's true.
But that's a whole nother issue. Is providing more funds for the arts.
Our jazz band at times didn't even have a teacher, really.
I feel like,
and there was a guy that would come in for free. He wasn't a teacher, but he would come in and sort of lead the jazz band.
Right. He kind of became my trumpet teacher, at least for one lesson. But I actually, well, anyway, yeah.
So so 10th grade comes around, and crushes happen and things like that. You go to a dance.
Okay, hold on. Back it up. Beep, beep, beep. Back it up here. All right, pep up a little bit more. You're about to talk something real personal here, Nicky.
Well, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I don't know, but, you're about to, okay. But I will say, Nicky was about to talk about dances. That's a whole thing that I feel like we should discuss here. Dances. Now, that's a real, high school thing to have, you know, going to your
first
high school
dance and watching Dances with Wolves.
You didn't watch that until this past quarantine. Actually.
I know that because I didn't have the normal high school experience.
I see. And much like the length of Dances with Wolves, which is almost 4 hours, a high school dance.
That is not true.
Isn't it?
No, it's not 4 hours.
I said it's almost 4 hours.
No.
I believe
I just watched it.
I believe it's almost 4 hours.
I don't know about that.
Why don't you look it up? Look.
No.
Dances with Wolves. Let's see here. And that is 3 hours and 56 minutes. Looks
really?
Like
is
I
it
am
that
right.
long? Wow.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, Max is right.
I don't remember it being that long. It doesn't feel long.
Anyway, one might say it lasts the length of a high school dance.
But
although the high school dance is probably less time.
You know, you go to your first high school dance, and when was that? When did we go to our first one?
I believe
we were in 10th grade,
The first time we went was
homecoming
dance, sophomore year. And I will say, I cut a rug.
We did.
I cut a rug at the dance, and some people were like, "Oh, Max, that's good dancing right there."
We did go, and I don't know. I mean, it was, you know, it wasn't this kind of thing that you see in movies and TV where you're like, "Oh, I hope I can dance with that girl." You know, I mean, it would be cool to have gone with a girl to that dance, but you know, Max and I just kind of went stag, as they say.
Well, a lot of people went stag. I think especially as homecoming, it didn't really matter that much.
Sure, homecoming never really mattered.
I mean, in addition to that, I mean, a lot of our friends went stag. It was just kind of like going to the dance, you know, and if you saw a girl to dance with on the floor, you would just do that. But at the time, I did not.
So that's something
you kind of danced with just like a lot of people at the same time, and sometimes there would be a circle, and that's where I showed off some of my moves, was in the circle, you know.
That's still the case today.
Sure.
I guess I feel most comfortable dancing with myself. No, that's not true.
I mean, do I feel the most comfortable? I mean, not necessarily true. I feel comfortable dancing with other people just as equally.
No. That's not what I mean.
I know, you were trying to quote Billy Idol.
But what I meant was dancing with other people, but dancing, doing your own moves, you know?
I see. Yes, right, exactly, yes. But that's not true.
But I do like dancing with a partner.
I mean, it depends on the type of dancing, though. You see, that's a thing at these high school dances, especially around our time. Well, no, I guess it became a thing before that, too. But
you would see this grinding
thing going on.
And it was just like this at a high school. Wow.
It's just very, you know.
It's a little too much.
It's a little too much for me.
Sounds prudish, I know, but come on. I think it's too much today. You know, even with as adults.
Today. Well, it's just kind of awkward.
Everybody's so busy trying to be an adult. Why can't you just have fun like when you were a kid?
Well,
dance like the way they did in the 60s, you know?
It's not
when dancing was just about having fun.
It's not about trying to be like an adult, because it's just it's hypersexualized, and that's a bad thing. That's fine. It's just when there are other people around you, it's awkward, you know? It's kind of alienating, you know?
Sure.
And it's like, all right, get a room already, you know?
Yeah.
Sorry, I know I said you know a lot just now, but...
but these are the kinds of things that would happen at high school dances. I mean, I remember it got pretty crazy.
It got pretty crazy at one point. But that's also kind of funny in itself. It's kind of fun in that sense because it's so uniquely high school at the same time.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I will say that, yes, anyway, that is all I have to say.
But it's funny because I remember we went to homecoming in 11th grade, and
it wasn't quite as fun. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, that's not what I was going to say. Oh. I was just going to say that I remember there were kids who were like the hipster types, And they were even coming to homecoming. They'd be the kind of people that wouldn't go to homecoming, but they even came.
You just gotta go. You gotta go. You gotta show your face.
Show your face, yeah. But, I guess, that's that. I don't know if I want to talk about this.
Saying you know a lot. I just said you know.
I don't know if you want to talk. I want to talk about this, but when you're in high school, you go through these changes and emotionally too, and sometimes you develop crushes on people, and sometimes they're unrequited crushes, and you try to learn in high school. You try to learn to navigate sort of the dating scene, and you make mistakes, and you don't understand how everything works. And
what are you trying to say right now?
And it's all a learning process, is what I'm trying to say. And high school is really the time you start to learn how to go on dates, I guess, or even ask out a girl for the first time.
Sure, but boy, that is ever changing still, because this was prior, really. I mean, you did have a few dating sites that were going on at the time, but now
like Match.com. Those were for adults,
But they were really for adults,
like JDate.
JDate. Well, we know our friend's mother met her future husband on JDate, and they're still together. But I will just say that it was so interesting back then to think now, boy, how much the dating scene has evolved, that it's expected to be online to date somebody, and I'm still trying.
I guess I don't know if
myself, because I've been a long holdout on doing it the traditional way.
I don't think that's the case in high school. I really don't know. I'd be interested to.
I really don't know in high school.
I'd really be interested. Well, I mean, I guess if I'm fine, but to believe some of these television shows, well, then I don't know. Then there is online dating even in high schools, but
there is in a manner of speaking. They're definitely using
these
internet technology to facilitate their dating lives.
Right.
That's for sure, and that's something we didn't have when we were younger.
We didn't have social media. We didn't even have smartphones when we were in high school. I mean, Max and I still don't have smartphones. Really?
Well, that may be changing very soon because the technology will not allow it anymore. Anyway, well, actually, you could technically have you can have a dumb phone.
I remember.
Anyway, that's another.
I remember at the homecoming dance when we were sophomores, and somebody had dropped a girl had dropped a ring, and some kids with cell phones were trying to help her find it, and they got out their phones and they just clicked on their phones to shine light. But pardon.
Wait, you do have a smartphone. What are you talking about?
Pardon.
Wait, are you not wanting to say that or something?
Yeah, pardon. And
okay, for some reason.
And I don't use a smartphone outside of school, so to speak. I don't use it outside of home. I use my flip phone because I don't want to be encumbered by this big, bulky thing. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, I remember them trying to help this girl try to find her ring with these small Nokia phones, and, they just would shine a little light. And boy, has technology advanced now. You got flashlights on your phone, where it'd be way easier. The light be a lot stronger. It's just funny how much has changed in the past 15 20 years, actually,
Yes. If you want to reveal your age, that's not something I really wanted, but okay.
We already said 2002 is when we started high school.
Oh, that's right. Anyway, sorry. Well, I guess, do you have anything else to say about this? Do we need a part 2 of high school? Because there are other things I would like to talk about.
Well, there's substitute teaching, and there's, well, I don't know. I guess, do we feel like we really got to the nitty-gritty of things?
Not really, because you kept doing these tangents all the time. I mean, I just feel like...
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of it.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. Okay, navigating friendships in high school. I felt like...
It's hard to navigate the nitty-gritty when you're not mentioning specifics.
Well, what do you mean by that?
We don't want to mention specifics, But maybe we do. We just don't want to use anybody's names in particular.
All right. Well, was there something you wanted to say regarding that? I feel like we did cover that a bit. We talked about being friends with older people. And
I'll do this story because, it gives the listeners a little something. I remember, so when we were 11th grade, went to homecoming, and I developed, at that same night, I developed a crush on this girl. And
11th grade?
Yeah, in 11th grade.
It wasn't 10th grade?
It wasn't 10th grade. And eventually, I worked up the courage to ask her out. First time I ever asked out anybody. And I didn't ask my older brother's advice or anything. I just did it. And, before then, we were a little bit embarrassed to, even talk about, relationship stuff with anybody or even crushes with any family members. And to this day, I'm still a little bit embarrassed to talk about that. But I did ask this girl out eventually, and she did reject me. But it was just funny the way I asked her out. It was so, I had these preconceived notions of, I was living like I was some kid still, asking out a girl, where I was just like...
You might want to watch how many you-knows you're saying, just a heads up here.
Oh, thank you. I went up to her at her locker someday the next week, and I said, hey, I was wondering if you'd like to go out with me.
That's it?
I said that.
You didn't say anything else?
And what does that even mean, though? It's almost like I had the idea that, if she said yes, we would go out with each other. It was like...
Oh, that's what you meant?
Yeah, that's what I had in my mind.
I never thought that.
I was like, in my mind, I was like thinking like a kid. Because, you see these kids, they have these relationships, but they're not real, but they're just, so-and-so's going out with her, and it just happens, like that, just very easily. And, I just thought, this could happen like that. And
you're being very vague in the manner in which you're
I'm sorry,
this.
I'm trying to
explain. I think what Nicky's trying to say is sometimes you see when you're in elementary school, these kids that are quote unquote going out with each other, and it just seems to happen all of a sudden without having gone on, because dating is not really a thing. You're just kind of you're together in a way.
Right.
I guess, or something like that.
Right. That's what I mean. And so
you don't go on a few dates and then decide, okay, we're going out.
I was still so emotionally immature that I thought, that's the way things would work. Even
see, there you go. Grade. So Nicky has changed.
Sure.
In some respects.
And I asked her out like that, and she at first said, let me think about it. And she eventually said no. And that was unfortunate, but I was proud of myself for asking her out because it was the first time I ever asked out a girl. But it was funny the way I asked her out because in retrospect, I should have probably said, I was wondering if you wanted to get some coffee sometime or something like that, or I don't drink coffee. I didn't even drink coffee back then. So I would have said, do you want to get some tea or ice cream or something like that?
Well, no, I guess you could say that. But in high school, you would probably say, do you want to go to...
You want to get a soda pop?
You want to get you want to go to the local ice cream parlor and, share
get a root beer float?
Go to a soda jerk and...
Right.
But seriously, you might just say... you might even say, do you want to just grab a bite to eat or something like that?
Right. And then I started asking people their advice, and I told my older brother, and he's like, wow. He's like, you actually asked somebody out, and he said, you should have said this. And I was like, maybe you're right. And then I remember asking a friend, and he's like, you like this girl? You should... I don't know what he's thinking, but he's like, you should get some tickets to Coachella, invite her to Coachella. I'm like, what? Like Coachella? It's so expensive. Granted, this was the early years of Coachella wasn't as expensive as it is now. I think it was one of the first years it was.
But that seems so bizarre. They invite her to a place that's not near.
Totally bizarre. I was like, what are you talking about? But, you know, you navigate these crushes and you're learning things for the first time. And gosh, you know, things haven't changed much since. No, I don't know.
Well, I guess it was the early years of Coachella. Coachella started in 1999, but then wasn't there in 2000, and then it restarted again in 2001.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I had a big crush in high school as well.
Oh, wow.
But the girl had a boyfriend. The girl had a boyfriend, though, unfortunately.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yes.
But, you know, you learn to deal with that kind of stuff, and you grow and you learn. And because you're navigating things, mistakes are going to happen. And that's just a part of growing up. That's a part of developing as a human being. And so that's okay. Mistakes are okay. And that's all I'm saying. You know, don't be afraid to make mistakes is what I'm trying to say. Because I think if I never had worked up to the courage to ask out that girl, I would have regretted it.
You know what's interesting, though?
Even though my way about asking her out was flawed. And
really innocent.
And was so innocent. I was so innocent still and naive.
Right.
But that was the first step to maturing in an emotional kind of way, and
the first step to recovery. I just wanted to clarify also, though, that the girl I had a crush on. Let's just leave it be, I guess. I was going to say some people might think, well, why didn't you express how you felt anyway to her? You know. Well, the circumstances were such that I was not able to, because
what?
And we'll leave it at that.
You didn't say anything just now. Oh boy.
All right.
But
you guys, a lot of you out there probably had your first romances in high school, which we did not. We were pretty late bloomers. But I will say that
I'm planning to have my first romance sometime later this year.
Right. Well, we haven't bloomed yet, is what I mean.
I plan
later in life. Bloomers.
And now I have learned that the correct way to ask a girl out is by saying, do you want to go out with me?
Right.
But now I really mean it really makes sense.
Well, you see, the thing is, in high school, it doesn't make sense, but now it does. But to be serious, a lot of you probably did experience your first relationships in high school, or even maybe a little before then. And so I'm sure you guys had your own personal weird ways of navigating that. And that is, comment on that.
Okay. That is okay.
And you had your own steps to recovery as well. No, I'm just kidding around. Anyway, comment on that. If you should feel inclined, comment on the episode and talk about.
And let us know what your experiences navigating the world of romance was like
in high school. Because this was such an in-depth conversation, we are going to end this week's podcast and continue with a part 2 of high school next week.
Yes, we'll pick up where we left off.
And until then, thank you very much for listening to this week's edition of Splitting Hairs with Max and Nicky.
See you next time. Once again, if you like what you heard or saw today on our special edition of Splitting Hairs with Max and Nicky and like to view or listen to more content from us, please visit our Patreon page, patreon.com/splittinghairs, and become an exclusive member today.